Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes, and Happy New Year. It's good to be back here with all of you. Thanks to the folks that filled in. I really appreciate it. We are now officially at the beginning of an election year that promises to be a very wild ride. The first in the nation Iowa Republican caucus is less than 2 weeks away. That's the first votes that will be cast. As Politico reports, Donald Trump's campaign for Capitol endorsements is accelerating leading up to that deadline. And predictably, Republicans are falling in line. Today, you've got the number 3 House Republican, Tom Emmer of Minnesota, the one whose speakership bid was single-handedly destroyed by Donald Trump, announcing his endorsement of Trump's third bid for the White House. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas followed suit with a statement that I think perfectly articulates the insane false history that Trump and his party are going to tell to try to win this election. Here it is. Senator Cotton said in part, quote, "When Donald Trump was president, America was safe, strong, and prosperous. The economy was booming. Working class wages were growing. Our border was secure, and our enemies feared us. With Joe Biden as president, everything has gone to hell. Families can't afford groceries. Our border is wide open to a full-blown invasion, and our enemies are starting wars everywhere." Of course, we also heard Donald Trump making those kinds of outlandish claims himself. Everything was perfect when he was president. Everything has been awful under Joe Biden. But recently, while repeating the argument at a campaign rally in New Hampshire, Trump revealed a really amazing tell.
Were you better off 5 years ago, or are you better off today? No contest. There's no contest. Nobody would say today. What a difference a president can make. It really does make a difference, a big difference.
What's that? You notice what he said? 5 years. Are you better off than you were 5 years ago? Now, he's obviously referencing the iconic line from Ronald Reagan that helped him clinch the presidency in 1990.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? And if you answer all of those questions yes, why then I think your choice is very obvious as to who you'll vote for.
Candidates have been using the "are you better off" line ever since. And so here comes Donald Trump. And somehow it's 5 years instead of 4. And there's a very obvious reason for that. Because 4 years ago, let's see if we can do the math, it was 2020. You remember 2020? You and I were both here. We were in the midst of the worst pandemic in 100 years. Thousands of Americans were dying every day. Hospitals were overflowing. Morgues were overwhelmed. The dead bodies were being piled up in refrigerated trucks they had to bring in. We had mass graves being dug in New York City, and the president was suggesting that people treat the deadly virus by injecting bleach or shining UV light inside their body or taking a horse dewormer. Tens of millions of people lost their jobs, the worst unemployment rate since the Great Depression. Across the country, millions of people turned to food banks, waiting in miles-long lines like this one. There was a genuine, palpable, ever-present sense of chaos and social unraveling throughout America, throughout its towns and cities. Do you remember that in that year, 2020, the murder rate rose nearly 30% in 1 year, a completely unprecedented spike in violence? So just in terms of these objective metrics, a lot of things were going haywire in this country 4 years ago while Donald Trump was president. So let's look at what things are 4 years later under President Joe Biden. Thankfully, the worst of the pandemic is over. Even a spike in cases, as there are right around now, actually, this time of year, does not result in mass graves and morgues overflowing, in large part thanks to mass vaccination. On the economy, the country's having an incredible economic recovery, in some ways maybe the best it's ever seen. The unemployment rate has dropped below 4% and stayed there for the longest streak in literally 50 years. Job creation has exploded, as the White House touts in that chart. Look at that. That's over the course of the presidency. The U.S. economy just added another 200,000 jobs in November. Manufacturing spending and investment is off the charts almost literally. You can see here, right? Look what happens. Yet another promise Donald Trump failed to follow through on during his time in office. Basically, Every major economic indicator is up under President Joe Biden. Not to mention fuel is now less than it was in 2022. There is one exception: consumer confidence. The thing about consumer attitudes in the economy is that there is a massive partisan lens to it. Take a look at this incredible recent example. So nearly 30% of Republicans who made more money in 2022 than they did in 2020, meaning their income increased, said their income had actually decreased. And that's true of even those who made over $40,000 more. They're making $40,000 more, and they're telling pollsters they're making less money. They refuse to accept the economy is doing better. In fact, they are in such denial, they are misreporting their own personal finances. And it's not just the economy. And I think this is actually crucial. Since Biden took office, that pervasive sense of social deterioration that came with the pandemic is also showing real signs of healing. Remember, Trump used this as a campaign argument, claiming his opponent could not keep the country safe.
Family and rights won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
In Joe Biden's America, we'll all be in danger.
You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
First of all, what was amazing about that ad, he was running it in 2020, is that he was showing pictures of Donald Trump's America. Donald Trump was the president when that stuff was happening. He was the incumbent, right? So here we are 4 years later. We do not have widespread chaos in the streets in America. In fact, after spiking under Trump at a nearly unprecedented rate, the country is on track to see a record drop in homicides for 2023. Yes, you heard me right. Crime spiked up during Donald Trump, and it's dropping now under Joe Biden. The most serious crime, homicide. Now, America is a big, unruly, and complicated country with many, many social ills, many of them tragic and persistent. It has always been a tragic and inspiring nation in equal parts. But we are on an upward trajectory. There is reason to believe it will keep getting better. And that is why Joe Biden and the White House should welcome the Tom Cotton story about Donald Trump's America versus Joe Biden's. They should embrace that argument head on. Talk about what America was really like 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Because the answer to whether you were better off in 2020 under Donald Trump than you are now as we kick off 2024 is plain as day.